Hi, live from Houston, Texas. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of What Makes You Tick. Look, I'm really excited that you're here. Before we dive in, just a few quick housekeeping notes. And if you've been with me, you know how this routine goes. Look, for everybody, the goal here is for everybody to have a great experience and to learn a little bit something about my guests and our show. Today, we have an amazing guest, and I'm excited to connect with this gentleman, and hopefully you are. Before we get started, here are a few notes for you. But before we begin our conversation, this is an interactive live session. You're encouraged to participate, ask questions, and connect. To ask a question, drop it into the chat, and it'll pop up. Either a LinkedIn DM will work, or just comment in the event comment section. Any behind the scenes issues that you may have, please drop those in, and we'll do our best to correct your issue or correct your question. If you get disconnected, this happens from time to time on LinkedIn, just simply rejoin. We know many of you are listening while you're commuting or working, so engage however you can. Even quiet listeners are important and an important part of this community. Thank you for being here. Now let's get started. My guest today is a gentleman I connected with a few months back, yet I knew of him before that. His posts on LinkedIn are impactful and engaging, and his network is growing rapidly. It was my intent to get this native Houstonian on before he grew too big for this little show of mine. He's a four-time software engineering executive leader with a passion that lies at the intersection of technology and people. His specialty is helping small engineering teams punch above their weight. He's able to do this by combining a unique background in psychology and anthropology? Oh, stick around. Let's find out. With 20 plus years of pragmatic engineering leadership experience to help them cut through the toughest problems in their technology, the human problem. He has helped companies reduce product cycles from months to days, release new products in months instead of years, and increased revenue as much as 10 times over. If a business is willing to invest in software engineering, he's looking to help them get the most out of their investment. Please welcome my guest, Robert Harris, as we discuss what makes him tick. Robert, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, Bryan. Thank you so much for having me on. What an amazing introduction.
Look, tell us, pick anything we've discussed before this. Tell us about your story. How did you get into engineering? What's your purpose? How did all that connect? I'd love to hear your story.
I'd love to tell it because it's a weird, improbable story, and I still don't believe it myself sometimes. I think I've taken one of the strangest paths to engineering leadership possible, and I still don't believe it myself sometimes. I grew up in the 80s, and it was a time of like rapid technological change and advancements, and all these things were changing the world. Basically, year over year, we had something new that was just kind of revolutionizing the way we do things. And one of those was the home computer, the PC. Well, even before the PC,
64, the Commodore 64,
the Commodore 64, the legendary Commodore 64. I'll grab it behind me and hold it over my head. I light incense around it, as a tribute to my current, ability to put food on the table, because I really owe it all to that machine. But before that, I owed it to my father. My father, he grew up in Central Texas on a farm off the Brazos River, born in the 40s, and came to the big city of Houston in 1967 to get a job with NCR, National Cash Register, big company. And he started out fixing cash registers with a hammer and a punch with his hands, and saw the transition to swapping out motherboards and disk drives. And it's like, this is going to be important. This is a big deal. I want to get my son exposure to this. And he bought me the legendary Commodore 64. And it became my best friend. I spent so much time with that machine, learning all the ins and outs, how to program it, read the owner's manual front to back, wrote games for it, and other fun stuff. But then something weird happened, and it never occurred to me that I could make a living doing that. As I was graduating high school and getting ready to go to college, we'd call it imposter syndrome now.
Yes.
We didn't have a word for it back then. It was just, I'm just this guy who read a book when he was 10 years old. I can't possibly do this for a living. There's real people with real skills do that.
Uh-huh.
And so I went in this odd direction. I went to the University of Houston because, my ancestors came to Houston from Germany in 1900 on a ship. and decided that was enough traveling for our entire bloodline. And we're all still here.
Yes. Wow.
So, grew up in Sugar Land, went to the University of Houston, got a psychology degree, which is not the best for your job prospects, a bachelor's degree in psychology.
Right.
And I was trying to figure out, God, I've got all this knowledge and I don't know how to do anything. And I had 1 semester left and I needed an elective. And I took an intro to archaeology class that included field work. Mm-hmm. And I spent the summer working on an archaeological site, digging with my hands, pulling data out of the ground. And I thought, this is so cool. So I went all in on anthropology and I got a master's degree. Also at University of Houston, started working at a museum. My favorite movie growing up was Raiders of the Lost Ark. So I wanted to be Indiana Jones when I grew up. I had the hat. I didn't have the whip or the gun. But I was having a great time at the museum, getting all this data from artifacts. But we had a data management problem at the museum. We were managing stuff on a card catalog.
Yes.
It wasn't up for the task. And I was like, you know what? We had no budget, of course, small nonprofit. I was like, let me take a stab at this. And I started writing desktop database software to manage the museum's artifact collection. And just like when the first day I got the Commodore 64, it ate me alive. And I poured all of my effort into it and a lot more hours than my manager probably would have been happy with. But I built this data analysis system. I was like, I've missed my calling. I really should have been a software engineer, programmer. And so I've got this career crisis because I think I have the skills, but I don't have any credibility. And I'm sending out resumes and I keep getting rejected, if at all. And I was like getting really depressed. And I was talking to my mother about it. And my mom said, why don't you look in the newspaper? I was like, Mom, it's 2001. People don't get jobs in the newspaper. Oh, honey, just look. Fine. Looked at the newspaper and Kirstead Systems is looking for a Microsoft Access VBA developer. I was like, that's me. I sent them my resume and I found out later the hiring manager threw it in the trash.
Wow.
But the owner got it out and said, I've never talked to an anthropologist before. This guy might be interesting. So they brought me in just for a joke, for the entertainment factor. And I brought that application I'd written on the CD, loaded it on a laptop, and they hired me on the spot.
Wow. Holy. Well, but okay. So that's my big thing is they took a chance, just a random chance, because they wanted to ask you about anthropology and they had a conversation with you and they saw exactly because you had that face to face. And look, I'm with you right now. And if you can't see the passion because of the job and the way people look at it, you put something in online, you give something, they miss the people. And I love that story because they connected with you and that made a difference.
It made all the difference. I call it the tyranny of credentials in the modern job market. There's so much you want to know about a person that you can't see it on a resume. You've got to talk to them.
Oh, no, and I always tell the story, and I probably tore it on hair a couple times. It's funny. I'm laughing because all I wanted to do was play baseball in college. So I'm listening to your story and I'm going, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I wanted to play baseball, but I wanted to be an engineer, like an architect or something, because I loved designing homes when I was in high school. We had an architecture class.
Me too. I took drafting.
Yeah, so did I. But to the college, the fourth college I went to, because I loved baseball, but I wasn't athletic enough.
Yeah.
And the fourth one I went to, they didn't have engineering or any of that stuff. I was like, I don't care. I ended up after 2 years. This was my fourth year. I had tons of credits, but not enough to graduate in a subject. So they called me in and said, they looked at me and said, hey, Bryan, we need a minor. And I'm not joking, Robert, when I tell you this. I looked at him and go, okay, yeah, what's my major? And I didn't know what my major was because I was there to play baseball. So when I laugh, and that's the thing with the kids, and we could get deep into this discussion. That's one of my passions with the kids. Right. If you would have been able to connect your purpose to a path within high school, you could have gone. Your story would have been a lot more boring. But they called you in because they've never talked to an anthropologist. I love that. That's awesome.
I'm very fortunate.
And you mentioned the book in there. What was the book? I'll let you lead the book off.
Oh, the book that I would recommend to people?
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, I grew up in the 80s. I grew up in Houston. It was Space City, and NASA was a huge part of my childhood. My dad was a huge fan of the space program. He dragged me down to NASA, back when it was just the Johnson Space Center,
Right, right.
to see all the rockets and go inside. And I was fascinated by it. So, and starting in high school and through college in my 20s, I read every book I could find about that magical decade of the space program in the 1960s, yes, where we went from having ballistic missiles to launch weapons to landing people on the surface of the moon. And I fell in love with the technological challenges and solutions to it, because it's amazing what you can do when no one tells you this isn't possible. They thought anything was possible, and they just did it. And so my favorite book from that era, and it has a lot to my curiosity and problem-solving approach, is called A Man on the Moon. Mm-hmm. It's by Andrew Chaikin, and he is kind of an archivist for NASA unofficially. He's read all the original sources and first materials and put together this compilation that talks about every challenge, every initiative, every person in it. It's got the stories of the missions, the astronauts, the technology behind it. And if you're a technology nerd like me, this is a lot of fun to read. And it was very inspiring for me as I was coming up as a pragmatic problem solver, trying to get a career finding insights and data for people.
That's crazy. No, that's, and you were where we are is, San Francisco gets a lot of the credit for, a lot of its technology advancements, but where we are, we have a lot of advancements, especially from Houston, South Houston, that have grown because of, come on, the old commercial, we had Tang because of the
a lot of the modern world is because of what we did in the 1960s.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and what we're still doing. No, that's awesome. I love that story. Look, for me, and I'll have one of the things for me, my book today is Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. And it really teaches us about being present in the moment and where we are. And it talks about, he goes in and talks about like all the suffering comes from dwelling and worrying about things in the past. And honestly, when you live in the present, that worrying and the things that are created in your mind from that kind of go away. It's not about, like I always share a couple of the takeaways. And one of the big ones was that, pain, or the awareness of pain is kind of staying awake during your pain, and there's discomfort, and owning that discomfort and understanding that instead of I feel painful, it's more or less, what are you trying to teach me? What am I supposed to learn?
Right.
One of the, I always have three takeaways. The second one I would say is that fear isn't about what actually is, it's about what might happen. And when people start considering the different options, funny because I had one of my nicknames in college was options, because when people would ask me a question, I would say, okay, you could do this, you could do this. I didn't want to make their decision for them. Right. But it's funny because when we face fear, we have the same thing. And a lot of that fear or the anxiety is caused or stems from it by what we think of could be than actual what is. And living in the moment helps to reduce that. And then there are two kinds of waiting. You have the short term, and which you have a few things that are catching flight, and you have the long term, which are for happiness, success, and salvation. And those were things. Living in the moment, I think for him, living in the now was a huge piece. And I don't think it was in this book, because I listen to books when I run, and I'll go on walks when I'm not on my cardio day. I'll go on walks and listen to other books. And it was one of them was talking about oh my goodness, Star Wars, and where may the force be with you. That was not the original line.
Oh, really?
No, it was may the force come from others. Is, I think, some form of that was where the original line actually came from. Yeah, I know, it's crazy. And look, for most people that don't know, and we've talked about this, a lot of this, because books are important. I think books, reading the books, the mindset of books, it's really about what makes you tick. So that fits my show as far as, reading the positive books. I saw something, I saw a post, I can't remember how it was worded, but it was asking about the books that you read. And most people just read different books, but what is that book for your mindset? Right. And for the show of what makes you tick, we look at really about trust and clarity, and building trust. how do you build trust in your advice? How do you build trust in a remote setting? How do you build clarity? I think you can, but you can send an email and somebody, or reads it and, takes it completely different. You get the response and go, how did you get, but it's about perspective. So give us some advice. How would you say you build trust or you create trust and clarity within this remote setting?
That's a great question. I like it a lot because I've been working in a 100% remote arrangement since 2001. We realized, hey, we don't need these big, expensive office buildings that we lease anymore. And, we're able to cut that cost, and, productivity didn't go down. I could make a strong argument that it went up.
Right.
Because people are able to focus more on getting the job done instead of getting to the job.
Yes.
And being a little more flexible with their time that way. But building trust, is tough in any situation, and remote makes it a little tougher because you don't have, the face-to-face, the camaraderie, the group settings to build trust like that. You can recreate them virtually, and we did some of that, but I think something that you can do one-on-one, and sometimes being remote really helps with that, is getting the time to actually talk to the people on your team. Like I loved my one-on-one sessions with my team.
Yes.
We'd block off, an hour on the calendar, and I'd get them on a screen share on Zoom or Slack or whatever we were using, and just talk to them. And I wouldn't have much of an agenda. I would say, how are you doing? Not what are you doing or how's this project going? Although that could certainly come up, but just get them to open up with you in a way where they feel like they can be honest and a little bit vulnerable, and then don't betray that information once you have it. Set a track record of, this is someone who I can talk about how things are really going, even if it's not pretty, and I know that they're going to help me solve the problem and not use it as a stick to beat me with later.
Right. That's, and one of the things that you bring up, and we've met through our networking events.
Yes.
And being up there, do you have time with your team to meet them live, or are they all over the place?
They're all over the place. I've got one person by happy coincidence that lives about a mile away from me as the crow flies. And the rest of the team is in other states, other time zones, other continents.
Wow.
Separated by oceans.
Yes.
So unfortunately, I would love to get together with them face to face more regularly, but as circumstance and fate would have it, I've managed people for 4 years now that I've never met in person.
Right. That's just, God. And it's not shocking. It's just kind of the way it is. And with AI taking over, or with we had one of the guys I work with, he was actually on Chris Nolan. He was one of my guests on here. He and I were talking today at lunch about AI and the differences in AI, but there's still got to be some personal. But I just real quick off the top, what's your view on AI and how it's going to change that interaction piece?
I think we are still trying to figure out, what is AI really good at?
Yeah.
And what value does it bring? And what's the difference between the hype, which is tremendous amounts,
right,
and the reality on the ground? Archaeologists would call that ground truth. You think you see something in an aerial photograph or radar imagery, and like, I think there's something over here. You got to go see it. That's ground truth. What's the ground truth of AI's impact? It's very good at doing research, at summarizing vast amounts of human communication. I call it's a great compression algorithm for human communication. It can take something big and distill it down to something really small and compact.
Yeah.
So, it's read those 9,000 Google results for you when you ask it a question and figured out this is probably what you're after, but you still have to verify.
Yes.
Because where it gets in trouble is when you try to go the other way as an expansion algorithm, and that's where you get the hallucinations and other weird things going on, saying, take this and expound on it. It's a little fraught with peril, and it's getting better in some ways, and I see a lot of discussion about this on the platform on LinkedIn too. People are saying, maybe AI is a tool for empowering people and making them more productive. And instead of, we probably shouldn't listen to every tech founder saying, we're going to replace engineers in 3 months, 12 months ago. Those kind of bold predictions have an interesting track record of not coming true.
Yes. It's kind of a scary, and it's funny because we, with being in education and being in a lot, there is a great way, because you and I both will write articles and post and put them on. There's different things that you can do through AI, and you can run it. and help you learn, as long as you're willing to do that. And for students, for my education, one of the things that I think is great, if used correctly, they can run it through and they can actually run. And if they copy and paste it, then they don't learn anything. They haven't done anything.
Exactly.
How do you monitor that? How do you do that? I don't know. That's one of those in the future, because of the technology. It's great, but I don't know that we've done a very good job as a society of teaching our kids how to do that. We're working on that, of how to use the AI properly, or how to use any of the technology properly. I think we're doing a better job of it now, or trying to correct ourselves. I don't know. There's just so many things that could happen.
I wouldn't want to be an educator right now. It's tough because it's all in how you use it. If you use it to do the work for you, your brain will atrophy. I've seen some studies coming out on that recently saying, hey, we've looked at brain scans of people that have been using AI for stuff, and their stuff is missing.
Yeah.
Versus, hey, this is a tool to help me learn faster, to help me accomplish faster. I saw a lot of discussions, people, hey, when you're interviewing software engineers, should they be allowed to use AI? And my response is, would they be allowed to use it on the job? Well, then watch them and see how they're actually going to work.
Yes.
Who cares what software or computer science trivia question they can answer correctly? I want to see what you can build. I don't care what you know. Show me what you can make.
Exactly. No, I love that. Like, we're already 5 minutes past our first break, so let's take a quick break here. Today's my 12th podcast of What Makes You Tick is an authentic, relaxed, purposeful conversation on trust, clarity, and traction. Why? To help incorporate the purpose in our life and what you do, and to make an impact in lives and other people's lives as we move forward. How do we do this? By sharing business and personal stories through a culture of trust, and creating a clear, impactful message for leaders and as leaders, with an insight on how you can build attraction within your life. Today, we were having a conversation with Robert Harris, and we're going to talk a little bit more about engineering, which actually, look, one of the next things I wanted to discuss was a big change that helped you create a positive opportunity. Is there anything in your life that's, for me, honestly, I am going through a divorce 10 years ago. As negative it is, made me a better father, made me a better educator, made me a better person, just completely. But it was because of the way that I took it, and the mindset, and the positive mindset, and the growth. I mean, I lost 30 pounds because I started working out, and I became thicker because I was working out. My diet changed, and still today I have similar things. So it was something that was negative, but I turned it into positive. How about you, Robert?
Well, about 13 years ago, I went through my own personal change. I got divorced myself, actually. But I had kind of like my career experience. I had a very different experience than most divorced men go through. I became the single father of a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old.
Oh, wow.
And, it taught me that I really can handle anything. Raising those the 5 years that I was single, raising those 2 boys on my own was some of the most satisfying years of my life. I wouldn't trade them for anything. We were so close, and we did everything together, and we had so much fun.
Yeah.
I mean, we were riding a cardboard box down the stairs, just cutting up, because who's going to stop us? I mean, we had our responsibilities, and I tried to teach them, how you're supposed to lead as part of a family, and how you're supposed to take care of each other as a family, because you're all you've got. And we came out of that experience, I think, pretty strong and feeling great, and it's prepared us. And my boys too, I could not be more proud of them. They're both, one just finished college, the other one is about to. They're already working professionally in their fields, and I just couldn't be more proud of them.
Wow, that's awesome. What are their fields?
So funny. This guy with 2 social science degrees has 2 sons that went to trade school. One of them is a welder, and the other one is a diesel mechanic.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So no, I love that. And oh my gosh, one of the things that I could go on a side. One of the things here that I've got an idea. I just got to be able to find somebody that can help me put this in play, is to be able to create that type of experience for kids at a younger age, and let them know, hey, I told my class today, we were talking about several different things, and I asked them how many want to go to college. This was my first period, because they were talking about doing stuff and not really understanding. And I was like, hold on, how many of y'all want to go to college? Half the class raised their hand. I looked at them all and I said, why? Why do you want to go to college? Because I want to, and it was always, and the reasons that you might hear. I'm like, no, really. I'm not telling you not to, or that you can't, but understand why. And I love the fact that they did, that they've chosen a path that is partially the same or may not be. And it sounds like they really love it. It's something they want to do.
It cracks me up. They came up to me and said, Dad, we're real proud of what you do, but we don't want to have a job like that ever. We don't want to be in an office all day.
Yeah. Okay. So look, I feel that the same thing. Oh my goodness. I am so much better like this. I'm good. Going out, I'm good. If I have to sit in this house much longer, I'm going, But I do want to, you mentioned something, because I'm going to pivot here for a second.
Sure.
I want to, and I know we're not prepared for this, so just tell me to shove it if if it's too much. But after your divorce, but since we're talking about trust and clarity, was it two questions? What did you get clarity on? And two, how was it being able to trust people after that, or trust mainly other women?
The biggest clarity I got was learning to trust myself, and learning that, the things that I thought were wrong about my first marriage or relationship, I should have listened to that guy and not doubted myself. So I don't know, call it the trauma of my family of origin, but I grew up steadfast in the belief that there was a problem, it was my fault. And I lived that way for a long time, and it really poisoned my relationships, honestly. That I should not apologize for wanting to be treated with a certain way, respect, and trusting my gut and my instincts when something is wrong in that relationship. So learning who I really was a big thing. I trusted other people to a fault was the problem. And this was a huge reality check on that.
And it's funny you say that. One of the because I'm built in trust, and I'm the same way. I will trust people. And what I've learned, instead of learning the negative piece of it, is I can't trust you. You're going to have to earn my trust. Mm-hmm. And people that have seen me on the show, this is one of my big things, is I'm going to give you trust. And I told my class this, I've said this for the last year or so, I'm going to give you my trust. What you do with it is up to you. Yes. And all that does is tell me who you are. It's not about me. I'm willing to trust you and find out who you are. And the more that I trust, I want to read the feedback that I get to tell me if you're one of my people, or somebody that's very complimentary to me, or somebody who's going to take advantage of me, or how is that going to work? And if not, we can be casual and be great, or we can kind of develop a deeper relationship, whether that's with a woman or a man, as far as, friendships or relationships, or, however you build that. And I think that's one of the things that I clarified, actually, not trying to play word, but clarified out of my divorce. And I was not going to be beat. It's funny because one of the next things that we were going to talk about on top of this was the obstacles that you overcome to achieve a goal. I was the same thing. I had 3 kids. We were on a 1 week on, 1 week off. And I fought for that because I wanted to be a father in their life. Absolutely. And those were some of the obstacles that, because of fighting those obstacles, much like you, I was able to find out who I was and what I could do. Is there anything else? I mean, besides, we don't have to talk about, but is there anything else that there was a time that you remember that sticks out where you being persistent helped you overcome obstacles, or at least learn from obstacles that were in front of you?
I don't know when to quit. And it can actually, it's one of my superpowers, but it can be my kryptonite too. I'll double down on things almost to the point of absurdity because I don't like giving up. And
yes.
I don't like throwing in the towel. So I'll keep an old beater of a car running for entirely too long, or trying to get some project across the finish line at work that just really needs to be decommissioned. We have a lot. People talk about legacy code. You hired an archaeologist. I'm going to keep old things around.
Right.
I see the value in them intrinsically. So my biggest challenge is determination is easy to come by, knowing when is the juice worth the squeeze,
Right.
and when should I stop
Yeah.
investing in this thing that's not paying off.
It's the persistence is it can be positive and it can be negative.
Sure.
And being able to, it sounds like most of the things that you've done were in were you being persistent, and it's also been the one thing that's dragged you down.
Right. So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah. Wait, hold on a second. I'm beating my head on this wall. What's this knot here? Hold on. I got a little bit of a dent in that concrete.
Right.
That doesn't happen. Yep.
Is that still hot? Yeah, it's hot.
Yeah, exactly. Let me see. Oh wait, no, it's still hot. Wait. Oh God. Wait. Well, that's my head.
Right.
Yeah, I know. Look, and look, while we're talking, so did you have any obstacles? You know what? I just want to ask, what does it mean to be the VP of engineering at your current company? What does that mean? What does it mean to be the vice president? I guess what's your purpose? The vice president of engineering.
When people introduce me as the VP of engineering, I like to joke that those duties are mostly ceremonial. So on the org chart, I'm responsible for all of the software engineers and the support team and the QA team as well, making sure they're working together in harmony to deliver our products to our customers with the features they need and with the results that will drive our business forward. In reality, that means I'm a servant. I go to my teams and my leads and my engineers and say, what's bothering you and how can I help? Because the biggest bit of clarity I ever got was when I was coming up through the ranks of management and then leadership. Okay, I got into computers to avoid people, and then they put me in charge of people. It's like something horrible went wrong. I was an introvert. And so, they made me the manager of software engineers. Like, oh God, okay. So now I really want to just write code, but I've got to deal with this sideshow over here of people. And I didn't like that. So I wasn't a good manager for a long time. And if you're listening and I was your supervisor, I apologize because it was a bad time for everybody, because I just wanted to get back to solving problems. And I thought everybody wanted to work like me. So I was like, okay, I'll leave you alone. You do your thing. I'll do my thing. And it worked great, but it didn't work great.
Right.
And I begrudgingly backed into it. I realized, okay, leadership is a thing I need to focus on. And at my most recent company, we evolved into a position where I didn't do any individual contributor work anymore. And I went through a period of mourning for about 3 months. So I didn't know what to do with myself. And I was lamenting this with our product manager. And he said, Robert, your job is to develop the developers. And a switch went off in my brain. I was like, you're right. And so I went all in on what can I do to support my team? Because it's not about me and my contributions directly anymore. It's how can I be a force multiplier for this group of people that have put their trust in me to do right by the company, and hopefully the company will do right by them. Mm-hmm. And it led to the most fulfilling part of my engineering leadership career to date. I love taking care of developers.
That's crazy. You're a teacher is what you are.
I guess so.
No, and it's funny because that's what we talk quite often about the transferable skills from teaching into. Now, granted, and you'll never guess, I was an introvert when I was younger. Really, mostly through college too. Yeah. Somewhere along high school, my senior year in high school, I started to kind of come out because I just grew up all of a sudden. And then when they finally talked me into being a cheerleader 4 years into college, where I was throwing girls around and in front of all, thousands of people, I went, right, okay, maybe I can be a little, so you create change wherever you are. It's crazy how that works.
That's cool.
Yeah. Okay. So we got one more reset. Let's thank you for listening to my podcast today, my 12th podcast. What makes you tick? Robert and I are having an authentic, purposeful conversation about trust, clarity, and traction, and how we sharing stories of how it's impacted our lives and impacted the lives of others. If you have any questions, which we haven't in a while, so somebody have a question. It's been a couple shows. But if you have a question or comment, I would love to engage with you and try to get your comment on my show. Robert, any takeaways so far from our discussion?
I think it's really useful the way you kind of go back to the first principles of human engagement You know, what makes people tick, what motivates people. Because if you can figure that out, you can be a very effective leader, because leadership isn't one size fits all. You know, it cracks me up. I see people come into an organization and they're like, okay, here's this playbook I ran at this other place that's as nothing like you.
Yes.
We're just going to run it right here. And
yes.
What they'll end up doing is running it into the ground. And I've been, you know, courtside seats for a couple of those, and it's not pretty.
No.
But taking the time to get to know people and where they are on their journey, tailoring solutions to help them be successful, I think is a real purpose that leaders should aspire to.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because one of the things we've done some different things this year in changing, and I've just had a hard time. I've adapted, but I've got so many years of education that it's been a big challenge for me to change the way they do stuff. I'm not organized. They're organized differently than I am. They're organized, don't get me wrong, but they're just organized differently.
Right.
And they present things differently. So one of the things that we've talked about, and I mean, really the whole team and the leadership team. And one of the things we've talked about a couple of times is how when you you put stuff out and you put small stuff, and then you have links that you can look and see where all the printout or what you're going to, the paraphernalia you may give out, or how you're going to impact, or how you're going to present it. You put those things out there. My interpretation versus your interpretation versus their interpretation versus his is completely different because of our perspective.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny you say that, because from a coaching standpoint, when I get a team, I'm going to look and find out what is my best strength. When I play a different team, I might have somebody that can hit left-handed hitting, but can't hit right. And I've got a pitcher that's pitching this left-handed, so I'll play them. It's about finding the strengths and the weaknesses within your people, building the weaknesses, but making sure the strength grow at the same time, and they're out facing.
I love that, because there's a really close analogy to leading small software engineering teams. And it's the dilemma probably I face most often is, how much do you play to people's strengths? And how much do you try to develop them into new strengths? Because when you're running a small startup, you've got a small team, there's very little margin for things that don't directly contribute to building that product. So, you know, you've got your database administrator, you're just going to give them nothing but database stuff. And you've got your user interface designer, you're going to give them nothing but UI stuff. And you can move really fast, and you can build stuff outrageously quickly.
Yeah.
But your team is brittle.
Yeah.
And, you know, what if the database guy needs a day off and you have a database problem? You're calling this guy, and, you know, like me, you know, 15 years ago, I'm sitting in a frozen field in the Texas Hill Country with my Sprint Air card and a prayer, trying to get my laptop to connect to HQ while I'm on vacation, and my very unhappy wife and dog watching from the car. You know,
that's hilarious.
So it's always a tricky balance. You know, how much do you develop people, and how much do you lean on their core strengths, because they can go really fast with those.
Right. No, obviously. And, you know, that kind of brings me in the next thought here. Through all of your software, I mean, has there been a time where, you know, you earned the trust of somebody, but yet they weren't willing to give it?
Oh, yeah. So actually, it's my most recent position. So I was working for a services company that wanted to reboot their R&D department. And, you know, I was there doing my thing, building software, having a great time. They had this sister company under the same umbrella, same board of directors, that was software company, software only, no services. And they were really struggling to execute. And the board came to me and said, Robert, can you just take a look and see what's going on over there? We need to find out why it's taking so long to get new releases out the door, and why our bug rate is so high, and why our turnover is so high. I was like, I'd love to help you. And so I kind of went back to my roots and put on my anthropologist hat. And I went over there and studied them for 30 days, like a foreign tribe I'd never seen before. And I was basically saying, hey, I'm just here to observe. I'm a fly on the wall. Pretend I'm not here. But of course I'm there. And of course I'm screwing things up, because my mere presence changes how people are going to act. I'm like, who is this new guy? Nobody knows him. You know, is this going to hurt us? Is this going to help us? And so in my one-on-ones with the people, because I interviewed every person on the team in depth, and I could tell they were putting up the walls, and I just love them to say, hey, I'm here to help. If there's ever anything you wanted to say to someone about what makes your job painful or what you think could make it better, now is your time to say that.
Right.
And, you know, the walls came down a bit and people started to open up with me, and it made a huge difference. And as a result, we were able to turn that team around, from shipping a new version once a year to, cranking stuff out every 2 weeks on an agile schedule in a very short amount of time, because I was vulnerable with them, so they felt comfortable being vulnerable with me. But most importantly, I made them part of the improvement process. I didn't come in and say, here's how we're going to do it. I asked every one of them sincerely, what is the biggest problem you see and how would you fix it?
Right.
And, after you do that with 30 people, you've got a pretty good idea what the center of the Venn diagram is, and you're able to go right to it.
No, and that's a great way to approach any type of leadership. I think, one of the things that we see from my side, just my experience in business, in sports, and in education, is people want to tell you what the answer is,
Yes.
instead of you asking them what the problem is and having the conversation as a leader. Let me find more data. And, sometimes the most important thing you can do, and I love that you were there for 30 days. It's so hard to really understand what the problem is if you're not listening and you're not sitting in there. And then a lot of times they may give you the solution without you even knowing it. It's not when you have to make, they will help you figure that out.
Yeah. And if we give them some ownership in the outcome, they will put in extra effort and commitment.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, I'm finally being valued. People value my opinion. That's a huge motivator.
Right. Yeah. So if I had someone that was looking to get into engineering and that was their dream, what would you tell them? What advice would you give
them? You don't have to have it all figured out to start. Find something you're interested in. Find a problem that you would like technology to solve and build a solution to it yourself and learn how, because unfortunately, the way software engineers are traditionally trained and brought up, they think their job is to write code. And writing code is a huge part of it, but it's just a means to an end. Your job as a software engineer is to solve a problem by adding value. And stay focused on the value you add, not the code you write. And you will create useful things for people that they will pay money for.
Yeah. I mean, it's still, no matter what we do, it's a people. You're helping people, whether it's in front of or you're behind the scenes, and whether you're introvert or extrovert, it doesn't matter. It's still always about the people.
Yeah.
And being a leader of what you do. So no, that's awesome. How would they get into it? What nowadays software, because growing up we were you would write stuff and put it on a floppy disk.
Right.
And I remember actually doing that in high school.
Oh yeah. My very first computer program, I recorded to a cassette tape deck.
Oh wow.
That's how old I am. So it's so easy to start now, because just about any computer is good enough to get started with a high level language. Like, I would recommend people get into Python because it's everywhere and it's pretty hot commodity in the data science market. Data science has taken a little bit of a backseat since AI is stealing all the oxygen in the room. But something like Python, which there's tons of free courses online, you can run it on just about anything. And the tools to do it with are free, not like the old days where you had to buy software to make software. Everybody gets their IDE away, at least a free version now. And just start breaking stuff.
Wow. I'm listening to what you're talking about. And there was a time where I did a lot of that, because same thing, we grew up in the 80s. And you had classes that taught some of the different language. Basic was one of the languages. And I could write some minor code where you play Hangman.
Right, yeah.
I could do stuff like that, and I learned, and it was fairly easy. It was not my gig. It was not. So when you say Python, I mean, it's come so far from that.
It really has.
Is there any? Go ahead. Is there anything in like that's resembles Basic?
Oh yeah. Microsoft still supports Visual Basic.
Wow.
As a fully featured, it's declined a great deal in popularity. I'm not sure what today's equivalent of Basic is.
Okay.
I actually wrote an article a while back on LinkedIn about, is vibe coding the modern Visual Basic?
Huh.
because they have the same appeal as to let someone who isn't technical write their own software. And that's kind of what powered the BASIC revolution when Microsoft came out with Visual Basic and say, hey, you don't have to be a trained software engineer to write useful software.
Ah.
And I think they've lost that a bit. And
Okay.
some people say that's a good thing. Other
Yeah.
people, not so much. I grew up on BASIC, so I'm very fond of it.
Yes.
But
I
the
understand.
idea is, hey, you've got a problem to solve. Here's a tool to do it with.
Yeah.
Let's leave all the ceremony aside. Let's solve it.
Agreed. Look, I know we're nearing the end. One of the things I always say for the last question, because of my connection to the youth, is like, if there's anything from a professional, from a personal standpoint, trust right now is trust and clarity is huge, because it's not there. The kids nowadays, I will tell you, seem to be, they'll shoot you, they'll say stuff to you that you go, huh? Like, I can't believe you just said it, but a lot of it is honest and authentic. It's just sometimes the way it comes out. But if there's any advice that you could give to the younger generation on how important and how they put in trust and clarity within their lives, what would you tell them?
Communication, being able to communicate with people that are different from you is a vital skill for your career. I don't know if high schools have debate classes anymore, but all of our modern technology is great, but it has also allowed us to self-select into isolated groups that don't know how to communicate and get along with each other with social media. And being able to have empathy for people with different views than you, and being able to communicate with them and maybe even persuade them, it would be a huge advantage skill to have. Get out and learn how to talk to people, how to present an argument respectfully, and be able to convince people. At least lead with persuasion. We won't persuade everyone, but being able to go back to the basic fundamentals of human one-on-one communication. That will, if you want to rise to leadership at some point in your career, it's a vital skill to have.
Absolutely. And it's funny because right, this year is the first year that Texas has passed the law in high school where kids can't have their phones for us, we start at 7:00. So or we start at 7:10. So 7:04 until 2:35, they're not allowed to have their phones. And being there last year and then seeing what's going on from this year, the engagement piece is different. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's always good because they're actually more engagement, but you can see gaps of they don't know how to do that.
Right.
And it's funny because today I was walking around, as I was leaving, I was walking around doing stuff, and you see kids trying to cheat the system by listening to their phone. And I'm like, no, hold on. We're not doing that. Not doing it. No. And, but there's a lot more engagement. The halls are louder. Classroom is still, they don't know exactly what to do. And, that's one of the things that I want to teach them or help them, but it's a lot rowdier, I guess. There's a little more loudness. There's not as many people walking the halls looking down like this.
Right.
But once 2:35 hits, now granted, there's not as many people around, but you see kids are immediately on their phones, just walking around. That's all they do. And I'm afraid that we're going to be looking like this one day. That's how their necks are going to grow.
Right. Yeah. Become chiropractors because we're going to need them.
No, Charlie Warren, one of my former players, was on here. He was a guest on this show, and that's what he is. He is a farmer. He's a chiropractor. Look,
I'm a regular customer of one. So.
Oh, good. Yeah.
I need to destroyed my body as a teenager.
No, after this, I'm going to run. And if I keep this up, then I may have to go see one pretty soon. So, yeah. Awesome. Look, audience, if you're listening, thank you. And connect with me. Follow the show. Subscribe to my What Makes You Tick podcast or Pulse, my Tick Pulse newsletter, which comes out once a month. Follow both of us on LinkedIn. Robert, what's the best way for people to follow you?
Just find me on LinkedIn, Robert Harris, Robert N. Harris.
Perfect.
Robert Harris is out there.
And we'll share a recap here in a couple hours or in an hour or so. If Robert doesn't, I'll tag him on a line so you can find him very quickly. He's got great software engineering knowledge, please reach out and find what you need from him. Ask him any question. He's very accommodating.
I love to
Robert,
help.
thank you for being a guest on What Makes You Tick.
Thanks, Brian. I really appreciate you having me on. This was a lot of fun.
It goes awesome. Look, let's go out and make an impact on the lives of our community through trust, clarity, and traction. One of the sayings I always leave you with is be transitional over transactional. You can find me on LinkedIn and stay connected for future episodes and deeper conversations. Robert, it has been amazing. You find my friend on LinkedIn, please. Join me next week when this guy and I'll have some interesting stories, especially how long it took us to figure out exactly what our business was. I'll have Adrian Leal, who's the business development manager at TLT Manufacturing next week. Super excited. Been a long time, a 3, 4, 5 year long time. Good friend who I really trust, and we'll give some insight into what makes you tick. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for being here. Have a fantastic week. See you.
Thanks, everyone.